Okay, so you've given us some really fascinating stuff to dive into this time.
Hmm.
It seems like a lot of it really centers around this idea of comfort zones, like why we stay in them and, if that's really a good thing or not.
Yeah,
So basically, could our routines and like all the things that make us feel comfortable be the very things that are holding us back?
exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the things that really comes up again and again across all this stuff is this idea that, like, comfort, while it feels good in the moment, can actually become like a barrier, you know?
Oh,
We
interesting.
get so settled into those routines and what we know, and it might seem okay on the surface, but it's almost like our potential is shrinking over time.
So like we get stuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Stuck. And we maybe even want things to change, but we don't actually do anything about it.
So let's talk about that downside, right? Because I know one of the sources used this really interesting analogy about a boiling frog.
Oh, yeah, the boiling frog.
Can you walk us through that a bit? Like, how does that connect to this whole comfort zone idea?
Okay, so imagine you drop a frog into a pot of boiling water. It's going to immediately jump out,
Makes
right?
sense.
But but if you put that same frog in a pot of cool water and then very slowly start turning up the heat, the frog doesn't actually realize what's happening.
Oh, wow.
Slowly adapts, becomes more and more comfortable even as the temperature rises, and eventually, well, it's too late.
So it's the gradual nature of it that's the real danger.
Exactly. The frog doesn't perceive that step-by-step change as a threat.
So how does this play out in our lives then? Like, how do we experience this slow boiling when it comes to our comfort zones?
Well, think about it, right? You might stay in a job you hate because it's familiar, you know the routine.
You get that paycheck every 2 weeks?
Yeah, the paycheck's coming in. You get comfortable.
Yeah.
But maybe deep down you really want to start your own business. You have that dream.
Right, but it feels like too much.
It feels scary. Or, maybe it's a relationship that you're in that's just not really fulfilling anymore.
Hmm.
But leaving that, navigating all the uncertainty of being single again, that feels way too uncomfortable.
It's easier to just stay.
It's easier to just stay. And so day by day, we make these tiny compromises.
Hmm.
We accept a little bit less. And then before we know it, we're miles away from where we thought we'd be.
Without even realizing how we got there.
Exactly. It's like this slow fade of our ambitions because we've gotten so used to just being comfortable.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. It's so easy to get caught up in that.
And it's not like it happens overnight, right?
Yeah.
It's subtle. It's those tiny choices we make each day that add up over time.
It's almost like we trade in our ideal for good enough without even really noticing.
Exactly. Comfort can really lull us into stagnation. But, there are people who break free from this.
Right, and I know one of the sources talked about John Paul DeJoria, right? His story is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. It's a perfect example of what can happen when you step outside your comfort zone. I mean, here's a guy who was homeless, no financial security, no fancy education. He started from a place of real discomfort.
So what was it that he did? What was the turning point for him?
Well, despite all that, he borrowed $700.
Just $700.
Yeah, and started selling hair products door to door.
Wow.
Just think about that for a minute. Going door to door facing constant rejection.
Yeah, that takes guts.
It's way outside most people's comfort zones.
Yeah.
But he did it, and, well, you know the result. He built Paul Mitchell, Patron. Huge success.
So what's the takeaway for us from his story? What can we learn from him?
I think what it shows is that the things we really want, the big rewards, they're often waiting for us on the other side of our comfort zone. He didn't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect conditions. He just went for it, even though it was hard. And that makes me wonder, what are you putting off because it feels too daunting or too uncomfortable? What's your door-to-door challenge?
That's a good question to ask ourselves. It's so easy to make excuses, right?
Oh, totally.
We wait for motivation to strike, that perfect moment when we feel ready. But I think one of the sources talked about how that can actually be a trap.
Oh, absolutely. The gym membership trap, right?
Tell me about that.
We all know that one. It's January. You're feeling motivated. You sign up for that gym membership.
I'm going to get in shape this year.
This is my year. You go for a few weeks, maybe even a month. You're feeling good. You're seeing some results.
And then life happens.
Life happens. That initial excitement fades. And suddenly that gym membership is just another expense.
Yeah, it's because we're relying on motivation, which is fleeting.
Exactly. Motivation is an emotion. It comes and goes. You can't depend on it to get you where you want to go long term.
So if motivation isn't the key, what is? What keeps us going?
Discipline. That's what the sources point to. Showing up and doing the work, even when you don't feel like it. even when it's hard.
So like with the gym, you don't get results by staying in your comfort zone.
Right. If you keep lifting those same light weights, you're not going to get stronger. You have to push past that comfort, challenge yourself. It's the same in life. Growth happens when we embrace the discomfort.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about building that inner drive that's not dependent on how we feel in the moment.
Yeah, it's about consistency, even when it's uncomfortable.
So how do we actually do that? How do we cultivate discipline and start stepping outside our comfort zones? I know one of the sources gave a 3-step formula.
Oh, yeah. Let's break that down. So the first step is all about what they call small, daily, scary actions.
Small, daily, scary actions. Okay, what does that even mean?
It means we need to think about growth as a gradual process. It's not about making one huge leap, but taking small steps consistently.
So like baby steps outside our comfort zone.
Exactly. Like tiny doses of discomfort each day to build up our resilience.
Okay, I like that. So what would be some examples of these small, daily, scary actions?
Well, the source mentions things like speaking up in a meeting when you'd normally stay quiet, or finally doing some research on that side hustle you've been thinking about.
Makes sense.
Even something as simple as setting your alarm 15 minutes earlier to have some quiet time in the morning. The point is to choose something that makes you just a little bit uneasy, and then make it a habit. What's something small that comes to mind for you? Something you could do today that would push you just a little bit?
That's a good question. I'll have to think about that.
The next step is about changing our inner dialogue. You know, that voice in our heads that's always talking to us.
Oh, yeah, that inner critic.
Exactly.
Mm.
And a lot of times, that voice is what keeps us stuck.
How so?
Well, our minds are wired to keep us safe,
Yeah.
right? So that voice is always looking out for danger.
And anything new or different feels dangerous.
Exactly. So we start telling ourselves things like, I can't do that, or I'm not ready, or what if I fail? And that just reinforces our limitations.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. So this step is all about becoming aware of those negative thoughts and challenging them.
So how do we do that?
It's about replacing those negative phrases with more empowering ones. Instead of, I can't, try saying, I'll try. Instead of, I'm not ready, tell yourself, I'll figure it out. It's about reframing challenges as opportunities to learn and grow.
It's like retraining our brains to be more supportive.
Exactly. It takes time and effort, but it's so powerful.
Okay, and the last step, the 7-day challenge, what's that all about?
Yeah. So this is where we take action. Pick one thing you've been avoiding because it makes you uncomfortable.
Something specific.
Yes, something specific. And commit to doing it for 7 days straight. It could be posting one video a day if you want to start a YouTube channel, or doing 10 minutes of exercise each day if you want to get fitter.
The key is to keep it manageable, right?
Exactly. 7 days is a short enough time that it doesn't feel overwhelming. And it gives you a chance to build some momentum, experience some early wins. What's one thing you've been putting off that you could commit to for the next 7 days?
Another good question. I need to take some notes.
Oh, right.
But I'm seeing the pattern here, right? Small, consistent actions, changing our thoughts, and then focused action. It all seems to suggest that breaking free from our comfort zone isn't this huge, scary thing.
Right. It doesn't have to be. It's about taking those smaller steps.
And those smaller steps can lead to big results.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting. According to the sources we have, there really don't seem to be any significant downsides to consistently pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
As long as you do it in a sustainable way, right?
Incremental and sustainable.
So to sum it all up, it seems like staying comfortable might feel good in the short term, but it can really limit our growth in the long run.
Absolutely.
But the good news is that we have the power to change that. By taking small steps, we can start moving toward a more fulfilling life.
Exactly. And, you know, it's not just about achieving goals. It's about becoming the best version of ourselves. And that often means embracing discomfort.
I love that. It's like a muscle. The more we push ourselves, the stronger we become. And just think about John Paul DeJoria again. If he had stayed in his comfort zone, who knows what would have happened?
Totally. So, listener, here's our challenge to you. Think of one thing you've been putting off, something that makes you a little uncomfortable, and then today, take one small action toward that thing. It doesn't have to be huge, just a tiny step outside that comfort zone.
And while you're thinking about that, ask yourself this. What are you missing out on by staying comfortable? What possibilities are waiting for you on the other side of that discomfort? Because really, that's where the magic happens.
I think that's a great place to end it. Really thought-provoking.
Yeah, definitely. Food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time.